Hi, welcome to my video. I wanted to make a book review video, a review of all of my favorite reads of 2022. I felt like I needed an outlet to talk about these amazing books, and so I decided for some reason to make a video. So here we are. So I read actually quite a lot of books. I've read 32 books this year, which is the most I've read in 1 year. I know that number isn't big for other people, but it's big for me. Obviously, I'm not going to go over all 32 because that would take me 3 days just to film. I'm just gonna go over my favorite 6. So I have 6 novels behind me that I'm going to talk about. So let's get into it. Also, I'm not going in any particular order, just kind of whatever is at the top of my stack. So the first one, or the first few books, are a part of the same series, and they are the Gormenghast novels, part of the Gormenghast trilogy. Actually, I think there is a 4th book, but I think mainly people just read the first 3. So yeah, I'm just gonna call it a trilogy. But these novels were written by Mervyn Peake. They take place in a fictional, in a fictional like old castle called Gormenghast, and the series follows a boy named Titus Grome from his birth into his mid-20s. I feel like maybe, but yeah, a substantial amount of his life, basically 2 decades. The first book is, okay, technically I would say that the first 2 books, which are, they're in the wrong order. The first book is Titus Grome, and the second one is Gormenghast. These, I would say, are novels that follow the main storyline, and the third one, Titus Alone, is more of a spin-off? Maybe not a spin-off, but it's a different story in a different setting. It's the only book in the series that's like that. And it's honestly not my favorite out of all 3 of them. It's my least favorite. So if you want to read a series but not one that's too long, then I would suggest reading just these 2 books, because to me they're like the main story. So I never heard about these books until I watched a video of Sunbeam Jess, who is my favorite booktuber, because she has amazing taste. Our taste in books, I would say, is pretty similar, which is to say that I also have amazing taste. Anyways, she talked very highly about these books, so I wanted to check them out because this year I tried to read more fantasy novels, and this series is considered like one of the best fantasy series ever written, although I wouldn't necessarily call it a fantasy. It's much more of like a gothic novel. There's not any magic, or like at first I thought it was going to be high fantasy, but it's not that at all. It's a much more gothic like atmosphere. You have the setting, which is in Gormenghast, which is like a very kind of like crumbling labyrinth of a castle that holds a very important, it's just extremely valuable, the castle. And then you have the characters that have never gone out of the castle, like they've lived their entire lives here, so you're kind of isolated in this one area, which is a big element of gothic stories. And just the atmosphere of the book is very macabre. I don't think I'm saying that word right, but anyways, it's like that. It's a bit like dark and grim. And there's just, yeah. So I wouldn't refer to it as fantasy, but it's still an amazing, amazing book. And there are some like magical realism aspects to it, I guess you could say. So anyways, it's really good, okay? The reason why it's very, very good is, for me, because of the characters. The characters make, well, that's not true. The plot is good as well, but the characters are a huge, like, reason why I love these books. Because they're very, very distinct. The voices that the author creates for each character is so unique that I feel like if these books didn't have dialogue tags, I wouldn't get confused at all. I would still be able to know who was talking, or who was responding, or like who's in a conversation with one another, because their voices are so like unique to them that there wouldn't be any need for the book to say like, this character said this and this character is talking. Like, there wouldn't be any need, because you would just automatically know, because that's how good Mervyn Peake created the characters' voices, and it perfectly matches their personality too, which is just great. And which another great part about the characters are just their very eccentric personalities, which also goes along with like the gothic genre. All the characters are kind of peculiar. They have weird hobbies, and they're kind of described as very, like, I don't know, they're just described in a very gothic way. I keep saying that word, but I don't know any other better word to describe it. But just the characters really make the book for me. They make it so interesting, and it takes a while for like the plot to really get started, like the momentum of the story to move, but I don't mind, because reading about the characters is kind of enough for me. I don't really care that it takes like around 100 pages in the first book to really get things going. But I will say that is one thing I don't particularly like dislike it. It's just a warning for anyone who's thinking of picking up this book, is Mervyn Peake is very, very descriptive. I don't think it should deter anyone from reading it. It didn't deter me from reading all 3 novels, which I definitely did not think I would do. And then I loved it so much that I was even considering getting the like omnibus version of it, like the huge novel with all 3 novels in it. I might still do that, but yeah, great books all around. The next novel is a very popular novel. It was very popular on like online book communities like Book Talk, BookTube, Bookstagram. Actually, I didn't know that, but I was told that. Well, I found out because I'm quite removed from online book communities on purpose, except for BookTube, I guess. I watch a lot of BookTubers. But the book that I'm talking about is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman? I'm not sure. Anyways, this novel of his, incredible, absolutely incredible. I've never read any of his other novels. I know he also recently released a new one, but this one changed my life. It is now one of my favorite, like all-time favorite books. It's such a good blend of comedy, but the comedy doesn't take away from the heart of the story, which is actually a lot harder than one might think, like to write a novel like that, because you might rely too much on comedy, you might rely too much on emotion or drama, and then you kind of get this like uneven story that feels very off. But Anxious People is nothing like that. The comedy isn't like slapstick comedy. It's just kind of witty. It's witty and it's like fun. It's like circumstance or like situationally funny. Like the things that happen, the things that these people do in this book are just kind of ridiculous, and they just have to laugh about it. But there's also like a lot of heartwarming moments, and I definitely got emotional towards the end of this book. This one is really beautiful because it's my favorite type of story. Are always the best types of stories. Okay, you have Everything Everywhere All at Once, Lord of the Rings, this book, and several other books that I'm about to mention. Actually, they're always the best stories, and this novel is one of them. So immediately I just fell in love with it. But just writing about how even when you're an anxious person, discovering that there are other people around you that are going through a similar emotion, that also have problems, just knowing that you're not alone. Those are the best stories, okay? And that is what Anxious People is about. And that's what makes it so incredible. So incredible. It's also nice that the formatting in some of the chapters is different, because the book is about a hostage situation, if you didn't already know. Which you may think, why is that funny? It's funny. The way that he writes it is just funny. He's an incredible author for like integrating comedy within a very high tension, serious situation, such as a hostage situation. But like I said, the format of the book changes sometimes. I don't know if you can even see this, but sometimes the book reads like a interrogation or a police like transcript, because the book goes between the hostage situation and the police who are investigating the situation. Just an absolutely fantastic novel that made me emotional, but also made me laugh, and it's just now one of my all-time favorites. Also, if I would consider this like a gateway book if you're not into reading but would like to start reading more books, or if you're just in a slump, I would highly recommend this book, because it's very easy to read. It's a pretty average sized novel. You could get through it pretty fast, and I just feel like everyone will love it. Like everyone, regardless of what kind of genres you tend to like, there's just a lot to love in this novel. So, also, there is like a little bit of a mystery going on, like a mini plot twist, so I didn't see that coming, which is great. The next book is another novel that has become one of my all-time favorites, and it's by an author that I really love, and it's The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. This is my second novel of hers that I read. I read A Tale for the Time Being as well, and I liked that one too, but this one is more my style, which is funny because me and my sister have both read the same novels of hers, Ruth Ozeki's, this one and A Tale for the Time Being, but she prefers A Tale for the Time Being and I prefer this one because it's amazing and I feel like it's perfectly curated to me. Also, I think that the book cover is very visually pleasing because I judge books by their cover. Anyways, this book won the Women's Prize for Fiction this year of 2022, and for a very good reason. It's amazing. It is about the O family, which consists of a mother, father, and a young son. He's like a young teen. I think his name is Benny, and unfortunately the father dies, and after his death, Benny develops an ability where he can hear the voices of everything, like every living and non-living thing, so like inanimate objects. So like the chair I would be sitting on, this book, the walls, like he could hear everything all the time, and that's a lot to deal with. That's a lot to deal with when you're a young kid. I think he's like 14. I want to say. I know he's just a young teen. And then you have his mother, who obviously has also been dealing with grief, and she has to figure out how to survive now without her husband, to help her raise Benny and to help her pay bills and things like that. So you have two people who are going through a lot, trying to making an attempt to go back to the relationship that they once had, to a life that they once had, kind of like this stable, happy family life before the father's death. But the more they try, the more things get worse. And one of the best thing about this novel is the depiction of just deterioration, just this decline in Benny's mental stability and sort of a straining between Benny and his mom. Even though that's the complete opposite of what they want, because they want to go back to normal, but they're really struggling to get to that point. So this is just, it's a it's an emotional novel. It's not like over dramatic or anything, or very what's the word? What's the word? It's an emotional book, and the depiction of like depression and grief is done very well. It's done very, very well, and that has a lot to do with Ruth Ozeki's writing. She's one of my favorite authors because I absolutely love and admire her writing so much. It is so beautiful, and I can't even begin to explain because I'm not articulate at all, but just because it's something that you have to read yourself in order to understand. It's not that her writing is poetic, it's not like she uses very flowery language. It's just that the sentences flow so nicely, and the way that she explains things and like describes a situation, describes a character's life, it's just done so well. It's done so well. Like, she's such an amazing author, and I really should read more of her novels. Also, every time I talk about her, I feel like I truly have come to understand Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because she's always like, her thing is like being in love with like grammar or words, like linguistics. And she's like, she finds it attractive. She's always like talking about it, how important it is, and now I get it. I get it. I don't even laugh at her anymore. I laugh with her because like I understand her now. Even though the story like itself is about something sad, it's just written so well that it's not like an overwhelming sadness. It's not a depressing book at all. There's there's wonderful side characters like the Lathe and the Bottleman who really make the story entertaining and kind of bring this excitement and fun into Benny's life that he's obviously missing at home. And it's not a depressing book. It's not at all. I feel like I'm making it sound like that, but it's not. It's really just a beautiful story about a family dealing with grief. And there is one scene that is absolutely beautiful. The book just builds up to it, and it's just like this breaking point for Benny, and it is so devastating, but it is so incredible. Like, the scene is so powerful because of the diction that she uses. Just, I love her writing. I love Ruth Ozeki's writing. She's amazing and talented, and I hope she lives forever and ever. So, yes, an incredible book. An incredible book. I'm so happy I read this. I've always been happy with her novels. I probably should read more. I might, maybe, I don't know. I don't think anything can beat this. Also, just like her previous novel, A Tale for the Time Being, this book also has magical realism in it, obviously, because Benny can hear things, voices of things. And also, like A Tale for the Time Being, the chapters alternate between two characters, which is Benny and his mom. So you get Benny's side of the story and then his mother's perspective as well. So, yes, and you also get the book's perspective because Benny can hear the book's voice. So the book itself is a character, which is great. Which is another thing that I love, is that it's a book about a book. Those are the best types of novels. Like, books about books. And one of the important places, like settings in the story, is a public library, which just makes things even better. So there's just so much to love. It's just, I really feel like this book is perfectly curated for me. It's incredible. I love it. The next book is All the Lovers in the Night by Mieko Kawakami. She is the author of Breasts and Eggs, which was a very popular and critically acclaimed book. I haven't read that one yet. My sister has it. She read it. But I decided for some reason to read this one first. And I'm so glad because it's a really beautiful, wonderfully written story. Like I said, this is the only novel of hers that I ever read, so I don't have anything of her other work to compare it to, but her writing style is also very, very nice. This book is plotless. It's a character-driven story more than like a plotty book. And the writing that Kawakami uses creates a very subtle atmosphere, so I would say it's a very like subtle story. There's not high tension, there's not a lot of action, there's no action. Like I said, it's not a plot, like a plotful book. That's not a word. It's just about the character, and it's just a story, I think, about identity and about womanhood. Like, how do you fit in when you don't, when you're kind of going against what society has set for you or is telling you to be like. And plus there's romance in here, which I like the romance in this book, but I really don't like romance novels, or like any novel that has any aspect of romance. I really can't stand it. I can't stand it when I'm watching TV shows either. Rom-coms are different. Rom-coms are an excellent exception, okay? But like, for books, I really can't stand romance novels. They're just not something that I'm into. But this one is very tolerable for me. It's not at the forefront. It's not the main kind of story element. So maybe that's why. Also, it's not like very cheesy or like mushy. It's just, like I said, the overall atmosphere of the book is very subtle, and so is the romance. So this is just a wonderful book if you're looking for something like not slow, but like a quiet, comfortable story that still has meaning behind it. Like, it's not just like a slow book about nothing. The book is about something very important. And a bonus book that is similar to All the Lovers in the Night. Also, isn't this book cover absolutely beautiful? It's so pretty. This is my sister's book. I stole it from her. But a bonus book that is similar to Kawakami's novel is 20 Fragments of a Ravenous Youth, which also has a very beautiful book cover. This is also my sister's book. I don't think this is the original book cover. I think this is a different edition. I think it's the vintage Penguin Random House. And this is another great book about identity. This one is more about finding yourself. That's it. Just about finding yourself. She lives in Beijing, so it's like, how do you find your identity in a very urban, chaotic, constantly moving city that doesn't really take notice of you because there are so many other people. You know, like, how do you find your roots there? How do you make roots there? How do you make a home there? How do you find yourself there? That's what this book is about, and I really enjoyed it as well. So I decided to just add it in very quickly. And the main character, she's sort of a mess. She's a drifter. She's a perfect definition of a drifter. She's just drifting through her life, kind of aimlessly. So if you like characters like that, you would like her. This is a great novel. So both of these novels are great. The next book I have is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura. This is a fantasy novel. It's on Goodreads, it says it's YA, but I don't know why it's categorized as YA. I think because the characters are young teens, but I thought YA meant more of like a writing style, but it doesn't read like other YA novels, so unsure of why it's in that genre on Goodreads. I don't think it's YA, because if it was, I would not have liked it. The YA novels aren't really my type of books, but this one definitely is. This novel was very unexpected. I picked it up. I was really interested in the synopsis, and obviously, like I said earlier, I wanted to read more fantasy novels, so I picked it up. I thought for some reason the plot was going to be predictable, but it is not. I would say that it wasn't. It has some plot twists in there that I definitely did not see coming, and I would say it's a good mix of fantasy and sci-fi. So lots of fantasy aspects in this book, and I did not see the sci-fi aspect of it coming at all. So really took some turns that I was not expecting, but I think that's a mark of a great novel. This book is it's basically about 7 traumatized kids, and that's it. It's just 7 traumatized kids getting together in a magical castle, and things happen, and it's exciting, and it's a wonderful, wonderful story. Just like Anxious People, it's a story about how valuable having relationships with other people are. It's very good. It's sad sometimes, but it's also funny, and I just really felt for these characters. Like, it's just a lovely story about friendship and how important friendships are. Again, just my favorite type of story is like this. So yeah, this is a wonderful book. I highly recommend this. I love it. This novel is incredible. I love it. I love it so much. The final book that I have is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. Another book that I discovered because of Sunbeam Jess. She's amazing. Everyone should go watch her videos. She deserves everything in life. Okay, so she raved about this book. Actually, I think she's a big fan of the author, which I've recently discovered she's critically acclaimed. She has won several high literature awards. I had no idea. But now I am a big fan. I'm very obsessed, and I am determined to read several of her other novels in the following year. So I'm very excited. That's how much I loved this book, is that it has now influenced me to read her entire bibliography. So what The Lathe of Heaven is about is turtles. And there are turtles on the book cover. Anyways, I got sidetracked. This book is about George. George has a unique ability that allows him to alter reality through his dreams. And he meets a psychiatrist who attempts to help him deal with his ability, because his power is kind of ruining his life. He can't sleep in fear of accidentally changing reality, because obviously, as we all know, dreams are incoherent and not under our control for most people, most of the time. So he can't do it like purposefully. He can't dream to change some sort of aspect of reality on purpose. It just happens. He never knows when it's going to happen or what's going to happen. Despite being a book about dreams, there isn't really a lot of dream sequences. Actually, I don't remember reading any. I think I read one or two, but it's not important what the dreams are, like what's actually happening in the dreams. It's what happens after he has the dreams. So I like that, because dream sequences can be hard for me to follow sometimes. Like I said, dreams are messy and chaotic, and so trying to write them down is never going to make sense, because dreams just don't make sense. So I do get a bit confused if a novel does have a dream sequence. Not like entirely confused, it's just, you know, dreams, right? They're confusing. But I like that the book doesn't really dive into what he's actually dreaming about. It's always what happens after, because that's what's important. Because that's really where the story of this novel lies in, is the aftermath and the consequences of his dreaming. The alterations made to reality. And another great thing about this book is George himself. I've never read a character that's like him. Again, I haven't read lots of novels. I read a good amount, but this book is the first book where I've read a character who is perfectly fine being perfectly average. And it happens twice in the book where two different characters talk about George, and the way that they explain him is like exactly on point, because they describe him as, like, the therapist describes him as like perfectly in the middle. At first, when I read this book, I kind of pitied George. All he wants to do is just sleep, and he can't do that because of his power. And so at first I felt bad for him, and I pitied him a lot. But then as I read the book, I realized that the other characters were right about him in the way that he is a very interesting person. Like at first I thought he was boring, but he's actually very interesting because he is so boring. Well, not boring, but just because he is so lackluster. Because compared to the other characters in the story, they're very bold and blunt and ambitious, and like they're go-getters and determined, and they have their strict rules in their lives, and they have their morals and philosophy and their principles and whatever that they follow. But George is nothing like that. And because he's nothing like that, it makes him even more interesting. So I'm very fond of George. I think that his character, the character that Ursula K. Le Guin created, was very interesting and very unique. Like I said, I've never read a novel with a character like this. And this book, also like the previous book I just talked about, goes places I did not expect. I don't know what I thought this book was going to be a plotless book. It is not. There are things that are happening in this book, and they're like, this book takes turns. It is very chaotic, but it doesn't feel off, or it doesn't feel like out of place. So I really enjoyed reading it. Like, it's just so much happens, but it's a skinny book. Like, it's not a long read, which is great. The concept is very simple to understand. It's just like he can alter reality through dreams. Like, there's no other explanation. That's just what happens. You don't need to know why or how it started. Like, it just does. And you just go in knowing that, and you're like, okay. And so it doesn't take a lot to explain. There's nothing really to explain. So it's a short novel. It's a short novel, but it's extremely interesting, and the plot is good, the story is good, the characters are good. It's just overall an incredible story. And she's an incredible author. I am thoroughly obsessed with her now. And I can't wait to read her other books. These are all the novels that I have for this video. These were all of these. Excuse me. All 6 of these novels. I'm counting the Gormenghast trilogy, as one whole because it's a series. So these are all the books that I have that are my favorite this year. They were great. I honestly read quite a few good books, like more than these, but these were my favorite out of all of them. This was just a very good year for me, for reading and for novels, so I'm very happy about it, because last year was not great. But it's okay. So yeah, I hope that this was interesting for the 2 people who are going to watch this, who are myself and my sister. Even then, I don't even know if my sister's gonna watch this. But yeah, that's all I have for you. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video.